What's the path forward here for Georgia after last night's loss in Tuscaloosa? Georgia 34, Bama 41. There's a lot to unpack from this one. And I think if you're a Georgia fan today, there's a little bit of a man, if we could run that back and play another game today, the game came down to the last play. You had the ball with a chance to tie it, to potentially go ahead if you went for two, if you're Georgia. But what's the path forward here for the Dogs after last night's loss? We'll talk about it. Make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Spoiler, I don't think Georgia is going quietly into that good night. I don't think most of the college football public do either. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Twitter at JDPikel. Got more content for you there, but also just let me know what you think about last night's game from Georgia. I mean, this was an absolutely bizarre start from Georgia. I don't think we'll see a start like that from a Kirby Smart coached football team ever again. I mean, down 28. It was surprising for a number of reasons. One, because of how much success Alabama had offensively with their game plan, clearly had Georgia on their heels. But I was even more surprised by just the approach from Georgia. I was thinking going into this game, one of my thoughts in picking Georgia to win this football game was, okay, Kentucky game, let down, don't play great, bye week. Kirby Smart's going to have all of their attention and then some going into this game. This is where we see Georgia do what Georgia does. They have a tough game, and then they respond in a just emphatic fashion. And Georgia, for the better part of that first half, you're like, whoa, okay, this is something we haven't seen from the Dogs in a while here. It's something that looks a little bit new. I was expecting that Kentucky game to be fuel for Georgia. That was not the case. And, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that game and say, okay, well, if Georgia is able to just play decent in those first two quarters, if they're able to keep it at a 10-point game, maybe this thing looks a little bit different as you head into the second half and maybe at the end of the game. Because that's the most devastating part if you're a Georgia fan today, is you're like, gosh dang, man, we played two good quarters of football. We were just essentially non-existent for those first two quarters. Those second two quarters, though, it looked like the Georgia team that we all expected to see, and still had a chance to win the football game at the end there. Took the lead at the end there. And Ryan Williams for Alabama makes a special play, and there's some part of this where you just tip your hat to Bama and you say, all right, hopefully we see y'all again. But Carson Beck, man, I know he had his turnovers, but to go over 400 yards, very obviously Georgia liked their matchup on the perimeter with Alabama's DBs, and they took shot after shot after shot and eventually started to connect there. But you saw the engine. You saw the horsepower from this Georgia offense. You saw what they could do once they finally got rolling and once Carson Beck got comfortable, man. Once they adjusted defensively, totally different ball game. The way they contained Jalen Milroe, they played much less loose coverage, I suppose you would say, when it comes to defending all the intermediate pass game, which Alabama early on, they were just dinking and dunking, and Georgia didn't tackle all that well. Did a better job setting the edge in the second half. It was very bizarre, the two halves we saw from Georgia football. Again, not something I think we'll see again. So on one hand, you say, gosh, we wish we had played better than that first half. On the other hand, you say, okay, well, we adjusted really well. And I think it was clear last night, too, they missed Tate Radledge. That was obvious when you watched Georgia last night. But, yeah, you kind of look at what happened yesterday, and it just feels a little bit too simple. Play poorly in the first half. In the second half, you play lights out and still give yourself a chance to win that football game against a really talented Alabama team with arguably the best player in college football in Jalen Milroe at quarterback. Here's the question I have now going forward, because last night was last night. Is this what it takes now for this Georgia team? Is this the switch that they need to have flipped? Does it really just take a loss for them now, for them to get rolling? Were they living in that 12-team playoff mindset? These are all just questions that I don't have the answer to. I have a hard time believing anyone in that locker room had any letdown going into this game. But, is this what it takes to get extra juice from this Georgia team? I love seeing Carson Beck fiery last night, man, because we see him typically, he's cool, he's calm, he's collected, he's suave, he's swagoo, and you saw him last night when Georgia started to surge back. He was fiery, he was emotional, And I'll be honest here, I think that might be what Georgia needs from him going forward here. I think you might need Carson Beck at a 9 out of 10 intensity. Not because he's too lax to begin with and that's not going to cause the team to play well. I think it's what you need from Georgia here. You need that as a Georgia football team to have that be the intensity that you have set in every single game, to have everyone rise to his level of play. Because last year, Carson Beck was phenomenal. Do not hear me incorrectly, but I think he was also in a lot of ways trying to get his footing, was a cog in the machine in some ways. You got Brock Bowers, you got Ladd McConkey, you have a lot of other leaders. They look to Carson Beck right now on this football team. They will go as he goes, and he knows that. But to see the sense of urgency from him, to see the intensity and the fire from him, that to me was one of the changes in this football game. When Georgia started to roll, it was behind a Carson Beck saying, all right, get on my back, let's roll. And that was, I think, very telling when it comes to what Georgia will be going forward here. I think you need more of that. So now we talk about, what's ahead for Georgia. And I don't want to live too much in this college football playoff end-all, be-all world, because what makes college football is the regular season. But at the same time, Georgia does not play for second place. They don't play to go 9-3 and have a good time and the Capital One Bowl. That's not what Georgia does. So if those are your goals, and those are the goals, again, in Athens, it's all fun and games. This morning when people calling their shot about Kirby Smart and Georgia falling off and this, that, and the other, it's all fun and games until you recalibrate your brain and say, oh, a 10-2 Georgia team, still in the college football playoff. With that loss last night, I believe ESPN's playoff predictor still has Georgia as a 60% plus chance to make the college football playoff. Y'all, does anybody want to see Georgia in the dance as a 5 seed? I don't think so. I don't think so. And again, 5 seed is just the number I'm throwing out there, but let's just say that's where they end up at here. That would mean Georgia plays a G5 school, then likely the Big 12 champ. That's a pretty nice path to what would be their goal of winning a national championship. I'm just saying here, for Georgia, last night stings. You like what you saw in the second half. It's good to be reminded that exists. You wish you saw it earlier, but you're encouraged you adjusted. It stings today. Let it sting. This sucks if you're a Georgia fan. Let it be that. But understand now, there is still everything and then some in front of Georgia. And they will have a lot of opportunity to validate themselves going forward here. That game, October 19th, is the one that I think everyone should and does have circled at Texas. You go to Austin, you beat Texas, you would imagine, hope and pray Quinn Ewers is healthy for that game so we get the best college football cinema we can possibly get. But you win that game, okay. The narrative around Georgia is, I think, reset if it needs to be reset even going into that game. Because, again, I think Georgia's still Georgia. I think you just had a tough loss to Bama last night. You play that game 10 times. What's the result? I don't know, but I'll just say last night came down to the final play. Came down to essentially the final play. Xavier Brown making a play on the football. It is what it is, man. Chargers at the game, but Georgia, they're not going anywhere. They're going to be right there in the mix. And again, I'd be wildly surprised if they did not make the college football playoff and did not somehow factor into that national title conversation because of the talent, because of the quarterback. Hopefully we see that fire still. Not because he's not good without it, but because I think that team needs it going forward. And because I still believe you have the best coach in college football in Kirby Smart. And if you disagree, he's got 2 national titles to have that conversation with. So, get at me on the socials, Instagram, Twitter, at JD Pakel. Make sure you subscribe, get in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on Georgia after last night's loss to Bama. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.